Before I get into the actual incident at Google, I wish to preface my remarks by providing some context to those events. The icon of American conservatism, William F. Buckley, is famous for having said, quote, "Liberals say they want to give a fair hearing to other views, but then are shocked and offended to learn there are other views," unquote. It's always been held, as a matter of fact by conservatives, that the American left has this particularly virulent strain of intolerance towards those that hold opposing points of view. Now, those occupying the American left hold their views with an almost religious zeal, which does not really exist, at least not as pervasively, on the American right. Now, to be sure, there are those on the American right who exhibit the same kind of unbending and fanatical adherence to ideology. But they, by no means, exercise the kind of dominant control over the right the way those same kind of folks dominate the left. Now, for a generation, the American left has developed a set of political orthodoxies, the violation of which simply will not be tolerated. It is not a matter of pure coincidence that recent declines in the electoral successes of the Democratic Party all up and down the ballot, which acts as the standard bearer for the American left, can be traced, at least in part, to this intolerance toward political differences. The American left is actually isolating itself and marginalizing itself. This isolation comes in ideological flavors and geographical flavors. Beyond America's urban centers, the American left's agenda holds very little appeal. Increasingly, thinking on the left has been dominated by an academic elite which has imposed their worldview on an entire generation of young people. Rather than encouraging the free and open exchange of ideas in an atmosphere of goodwill, candor, and intelligence, the left elite essentially enforces a form of fascistic adherence to their orthodoxies, and if you fail to do that, you're going to suffer the pain of estrangement and stigmatization. It's no longer permissible to vocalize any opposition or criticism of leftist ideas. Go down the list of issues on issue after issue. Leftists are really intellectually constipated. Let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean. If you hold differing views on the environment, you will get branded as a tool of the oil and petrochemical industry, as if there are no legitimate views opposing the leftist orthodoxy on the environment. Holding a view that prenatal science, for example, has advanced since 1973 in ways that are sufficient enough for us to revisit and possibly change the laws governing abortion. If you hold that point of view, you're labeled anti-woman. Or if you think in an age of terrorism and massive flows of refugees, common sense enforcement of our immigration laws makes for a good national security policy, you're labeled by the left as xenophobic. This is the context within which we must really examine this incident at Google, where James Damore was fired for simply offering a well-considered opinion his company assured him would be safe for him to express. But as the great Mr. Buckley pointed out, as I said earlier, liberals are shocked and offended upon learning that there are other views. Now, here is a copy of a document directly from the Google VP of Diversity. I want to pay particular attention to this statement because it reveals some very interesting things about how Google views itself. For the most part, large companies don't encourage a corporate culture where sharing of political views is encouraged. You're not really there to talk about politics, right? Rather than being there to share your political opinions, corporate managers and executives are very task and achievement oriented, and tasks are designed to advance the corporation's goal of profit, market share, new product development, competitiveness, whatever it is. And in this particular market, the information technology market, it's extremely competitive, although in the Google environment, maybe not so much, since Google is almost a monopoly. Now, Google isn't a political organization, at least until now. It hasn't been. So why are they encouraging the sharing of political opinions? political opinions are very divergent, meaning even people who can largely agree on so many different topics, they may find that they do have areas of where they disagree and disagree sharply. Having 100% agreement with anybody is very rare. So this policy of Google actually sets up inevitable conflicts among employees who share opinions, and all of this would be fine if Google believed and carried out their own policy. But Google is guilty of a sleight of hand here. Obviously, the use of the term, quote, alternative views and different political views, according to Google management, didn't include the opinions of James Damore. Well, now you might say, well, Damore's views were extreme, hateful, and hurtful. Keeping in mind that appears nowhere in the policy statement of the diversity VP, that case becomes even less convincing, where the Google CEO, Sundar Pichai, cited Damore for advancing harmful gender stereotypes. Except that's not what Damore did at all. Now, here's another thing. Professor Lee Jusson, who's a social psychology professor at Rutgers University, actually praised Damore for an almost flawless analysis of the science involved and all of its implications. You know, Dr. Jusson isn't a nobody. He's not just a college professor. He's a leading scholar in the field, and he's won various prestigious awards. But the position of Google is just not one based in science. It's based in precisely what Mr. Damore criticized about Google, which got him fired. It's an ideological echo chamber. The environment, which on one hand requires the open sharing of ideas and opinions in the Google actual business, where management also gives lip service to encouraging certain types of openness, but destroys anyone with a view that's violating their own orthodoxy. This is straight up authoritarianism, and it's anathema to openness. It can only suppress free expression, especially free expression of political views. But not only that, you have to be a fool to think this isn't going to suppress free expression of any point of view in Google. Because now the people working there know what happens to you if you disagree with the anointed ones. Expressions advancing harmful gender stereotypes is what the CEO of Google said to characterize Damore's writing. Google will soon be, if it hasn't already been, plagued by employees suppressed into silence of conformity. And that's going to work to the detriment of Google as a going concern. Google would not be the first company ever to damage itself with this kind of tops-down suppression, but it might be the first where a major corporation is imposing a political agenda on its employees. This is a form of authoritarianism on the left that came out in several tweets. It's really unbelievable. Like the first one is a tweet from a guy named John Scalzi. If you haven't heard of John Scalzi, you aren't alone. Now, this fascist authoritarianism has a profile on Wikipedia where he is listed as a science fiction writer. Now, I'll note his colorful use of the English language here in his tweet. But interestingly, Scalzi calls Damore ignorant. But as was already mentioned by me, an expert in the field, Professor Jusson, said Damore got the science right. So who is the ignoramus here? Mr. Scalzi. It seems it would be you. Another genius tweeting was someone named Sarah May, who is a software developer. And like Scalzi, May thinks expressing an opinion she disagrees with warrants a person to lose their job. Sadly, May can't seem to absorb the fact that Mr. Damore's memo was not a manifesto, as she claimed it was here in her tweet, but actually a well-researched and sourced memo full of facts, full of statistics. Now, what is so terribly sad about this for everyone at Google, including people not in Google like Scalzi and May, is their complete dismissal and utter refusal to engage Mr. Damore in any kind of rational dialogue. If he's in error, why not show him where he's wrong? But these people have a totalitarian mindset. They believe they know the truth, but they're so profoundly insecure in that truth, they refuse to defend it. That says a lot. Then we come to the worst case of all, Brianna Wu. Now, who's she? She's a video game developer who's now running for Congress. Okay, great. She's running for Congress. Here's the good news. She's running against another liberal. She's running for the Democratic nomination in the 8th Congressional District of Massachusetts against Stephen Lynch. And you know what? The Democrats really need more candidates like Brianna Wu in Massachusetts. It would help a lot if the Democrats could nominate people like her, because it would help turn the Bay State red. Again, this is another leftist who has no tolerance at all for differences of opinion, labeling them sexist and racist when they clearly were not. You know, you really have to wonder if any of these tweeters actually read what Damore wrote. Now, let me sum this up. What we're seeing here is cultural fascism going corporate. It can't be permitted to continue. Over time, these policies at Google will cripple it. In the meantime, though, Google needs to pay a heavy price. They asked for alternative points of view, and they got them from Mr. Damore, but they couldn't stand it. Let's hope James Damore gets justice for this egregious breach of trust. That's it for me. I'm Tony Contaspati from Great Vocal Majority. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll speak to you soon.